What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. In the Weekly Watchlist, I do a technical analysis on some of the tickers I watch with really liquid options chains. On the list, we have SPY, the Qs, Russell, Apple, Netflix, Tesla, Alibaba, Facebook, NVDA, and a new one, CRM, which I'm not sure, Salesforce.com Inc. It looks like you can see the company name up there. So we're going to be going over that one as well. Someone left a comment on that, so we'll add it to the list. As always, I'm going to do the indexes first and then head into our companies down below. So with that, let's get started with SPY. So SPY, we did have a shortened trading week, but I didn't do a video the week prior, so there's a little bit more price action to talk about. We had a nice bounce down here. If we flip on over to the weekly chart, you can see it makes perfect sense where the chart bounced from. The weekly 200 stepped up and said, nope, this is a support zone, boom. Sent the price a little bit higher. However, we can learn a little bit more looking back at the daily chart about where to keep in mind supports and resistances. I don't think that this is quite a strong move as it could be. We've made a 50% retracement on this just eyeball test from here to here, 50% retracement back, and we're starting to run into our resistance from our February lows and April lows. And I would imagine that based on the structure of this candle, we would go retest the April low, which is slightly higher than the February one. And then possibly, depending on how those candles form around these resistance levels, continue even higher to test out this double bottom here. And then a rejection off of that double bottom and a continued move lower is sort of what I can see happening there. We do have our resistance trend line that's downward sloping. That will obviously start to come into play sooner and sooner as the time goes by. The 50 SMA is sort of following it and will offer, again, pretty strong resistance there. You can see it's acted in the past, here, and just beating the price down each time it gets up there. So that's what I would watch for on SPY. The Qs are going to look probably pretty similar. All these indexes sort of mirror each other in some sense or another. Qs, you can see it came up to resistance here and saw a little pressure on Friday to back away from it. Same with SPY. But I could, again, imagine a small bounce up to maybe this resistance trend line, so not nearly as much room to run as SPY there, but maybe a bounce to here and then a continuation lower. If not, maybe getting back into this low, which comes from here, this resistance level, and then falling back down after that. But the market, this trend isn't just going to reverse so easily like that, I would imagine. I would imagine there would be some sideways, maybe a double bottom, something like that, before the market can continue higher. So that's why I'm skeptical of this bounce being a full-blown reversal. You can see, boom, bounce, and then totally fell apart there. So I'm just sort of waiting for this next fall apart to happen. So that's why I'm a little skeptical. If we look at the Russell 2000, this one was sort of a leader in the move to the downwards direction, so maybe it'll be a leading sort of indicator, if you will, for what might happen in the future. Again, could move a little bit higher to here, and then yeah, this one actually does look like it does have a little room to run. I mean, it could come up to this resistance, which is again about 50% retracement on the move downwards from here to here. So it could come up to here and get rejected, or it could come up to sort of this double bottom here, and this zone up here, and then get rejected where the 50 SMA starts to come into play. There's no real downward sloping resistance trend lines that are going to start interfering with the price. So if it cuts through this one like butter, who knows? Maybe it will come up to this one, or maybe the 50 SMA will start to beat it down sooner than the time it can get up there. But again, does look like all these indexes do want to continue a little bit higher and then a continued move downwards after they've sort of bounced a little bit more here. Is my opinion on that. So with that, let's start looking at our companies. Here you can see we have Apple. Apple has continued lower. Obviously, we had our gap down on Thursday morning down here, but bouncing off of this level here at 142.50. If you look at the volume on this candle, quite high, but look at the size of the candle and then compare that to the previous candle that had almost as much, or more volume rather, and look at the size of this one. This would imply to me some sort of agreement on price. A lot of shares changed hands, but the price didn't necessarily move as much as this one per se. So like I said, this would imply to me some sort of price agreement, and this may be a temporary bottom for now, and the price may start to move in the upwards direction now that buyers and sellers have agreed, maybe this is a fair valuation for what Apple is really worth right now. So obviously we're going to have to watch on Monday morning as we approach this resistance trend line and this resistance price level. How the price reacts to that will be pretty telling. If we want to continue in a downwards direction, obviously we will hold this trend line. If we don't, then there will be a little breakout, and then I would imagine the price would come up to our 160 level over the course of the week if we do break out above this trend line here. So that's Apple. Netflix, I'm kind of surprised about. I haven't really looked at it in quite a little bit. So I'm excited to see that it broke out of this pattern. We had this long wedge pattern that we had drawn in here, but we broke out to the upside. We fought through our resistance price level here at 271, and it looks like we had a nice gap up, held up by the 50 SMA after we dipped below it, and then pushed way higher, right up to our resistance almost up here, right around the $300. I would expect a continuation on Netflix in the morning. Come Monday. However, this is starting to become an overextended move. There is going to be a need for some sort of pullback, some sort of consolidation here, so I'd watch out for that as we go throughout the week. If we push higher, maybe come up to our next resistance at 310, or maybe the $300 mark is too much for it right now. Expect some sort of consolidation and a move slightly in the downwards direction, but then always a continuation after that, as this is a classic bullish pattern. Moving on to Tesla. Alrighty, so I thought Tesla was going to $400, but didn't quite make it there. Topping out when we talked about it not being able to break out above this 379.50-ish level, and then falling apart from there. The 200 held it as a double bottom there, and then we got a sort of bounce, but that came from way down here. So we drew in a support down there at 293.88 just about, and that's where this bounce sort of came from. But promptly rejected at the 50, and now we've sort of gapped way down, and we're sort of back at this level. So I would imagine the price is going to maybe do something similar, maybe not make it as high this time, maybe check out 325.50-ish and then fall back down. And if we can get a triple bottom there, maybe that's a good sign for a push back in the upwards direction. Overall, I think I'd say we're a little bit better than halfway of a retracement on this bullish move. Again, things can fall apart much quicker than they can go in the upwards direction, so who knows? Maybe it'll continue in the downwards direction, or maybe it will slowly meander and fight its way back up. We are sort of putting in a higher set of lows here, not much, but slightly. If we draw in a little bit of a trend line there, you can see it probably better. So if we maintain something like that, that would be pretty good. So if we do get a pullback, look for this line to come into play and support it a little bit higher next time and higher the next time, and we would be putting in higher lows. So that's Tesla. Now we're looking at Alibaba. You can see we're sort of putting in a double bottom here, which is normally a reversal pattern. When you get a double bottom, normally the price has found the bottom essentially and is going to move in the upwards direction, which it's starting to do. However, given the overall conditions, pretty downwards trend. 50 is way below the 200 SMA. I wouldn't be surprised to see it push up to the 50 SMA maybe, which is going to be a lower high than up here, and then continue lower. And after that, we do have all of our supports and resistances mapped out. Obviously, they acted beautifully on the way down. I would imagine they would do the same on the second go around, or maybe they'll just cut right through. Who knows? But we do have some levels to pay attention to. On the way up, again, the 50. On the way down, our mapped out supports and resistances. Anything lower than this 126.25 level, we're looking at 110 just about. And that's a very historic support that comes from way back here. We had highs topping out there and highs topping out here, so that would act as support on the way back down. So that's Baba. Alrighty, so Facebook trying to fight back again after all that lawsuit news. We did sort of find a bottom here and have continued in the upwards direction heading into the new year. We fought back through our pretty important resistance here, which is the first one we talked about. You can see it struggled with it for a couple days and then broke out through there, and then again held this price level from this low on Friday, and it looks like we're going to continue and make an attempt at this 139 level and even the 50 SMA and the next downward trend line. So I would say Facebook is looking like it's going to push higher. Look for the a little stutter here at this resistance trend line and then a continued push higher. This is sort of gone at this point. Remove that, and you'd like to just see it push through this for a bullish move and then watch for resistance to come into play a little sooner than this 149 level, as we have plenty of wicks over here. This is coming into play right on 145.82. just call it 146 whole dollar mark. I would look for the next resistance after it can break above this resistance here and this price level here. So NVDA, last time we talked about it, we were looking for the breakdown below this 145 level, and it happened. We got a nice move to the downside, put in a nice indecision here, and have sort of been floating around now in between these two supports and resistances here from our low here, and then a pretty historic one at 126.69. There is, again, we have a gap in the chart from way back. That gap is between our bottom two trend line or price lines there, so 113 to 105. I would imagine it wants to continue lower and fill that gap, but also keep in mind there is still this gap above to also be filled. So maybe it does fill the gap below to fill the gap above. So maybe the price comes all the way down, bounces, and rallies hard all the way to fill this gap here. Who knows? That's kind of a long shot prediction, but right now, again, sort of consolidating after this move in the downwards direction. I wouldn't be surprised to see it move lower again. Maybe we're sort of getting a bunch of tops here right around the 138.50 level, so I wouldn't imagine a breakout above it. Maybe come back and retest this support level here, and then a continued move lower, or just getting denied on Monday morning anything over that 138.50 and the continued move lower if we can get through some of these supports. Alrighty, so this is a new one for the watch list. It's CRM, which is Salesforce.com. So what I'm doing right now is just scrolling back through the history and sort of seeing how it's performing. Obviously, it looks like it's been performing relatively well, sort of following the market higher. You can see it's been an overall uptrend. 50 SMA is way above the 200. And then here it sort of followed the market sell-off a little bit. Although what you can see here is it gapped up huge. It looks like that was from earnings. We gapped it way up, and now it's sort of back in that level. So we're going to go ahead and mark up the chart. I'm probably going to fast forward through this for you guys, and I'll get back to you. Alrighty, without clogging up the chart too much, this is sort of what I've come up with. As you can see, it's sort of in a wedge pattern right now, or a symmetrical triangle, wedging between our top resistance trend line and our bottom support trend line. So we're approaching that top resistance. You can see we sort of felt it there on Friday at the end of the day. You can see it pushed up high and then sort of fell back a little bit before the close. And right now, we're still above that 200 SMA, so I'd like to see that act as support on the daily chart here if we open above that come Monday, and then either a breakout, or most likely it'll probably play in between the pattern for the next week and then decide up or down. But given the overall context of the chart, this crazy, it seems to have just been on quite a little rampage there. I would imagine it wants to continue higher. It's consolidating a little bit. Maybe it'll follow the market downwards a little bit if we do see some sort of major market collapse there. And it'll follow it to the downside, but overall it looks like it's been holding up pretty well given the current market conditions. This gap up on earnings was really positive for it, and it's moving upwards again quite nicely following the markets there. So like I said, maybe wedging a little bit further and then a breakout to the upside. We have our supports and resistances mapped out for us. Anything on the upside, we're looking at 143.61. Anything after that are these highs up here at 147. I would even just say 150 is going to act as resistance if we can get up there. On the support side down below, we're looking at this low down here at 128.98. I'd call it 129, 130-ish. Anything after that, we're looking for the support trend line. After that, we're looking at 120, and anything lower than that is this final last-ditch effort down here at 113.75. So that's Salesforce CRM, a new one added to the watch list. I hope you, whoever requested that, enjoyed this little analysis and the mapping out of important supports and resistances on it. And that's going to wrap things up for this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. So if you enjoyed the video and you made it this far, I would like to thank you. Obviously, you have an interest in the stock market and trading in general, so I'd encourage you to head on over to my channel, hit the subscribe button, interact, leave some comments, let me know if you think I missed anything in my analysis, let me know if you want to see anything added to the watch list, and we can certainly go over it. And with that, I wish you a green trading week and the week ahead.